Hello, welcome to Rivers Lesson 6, What Causes Flooding? So, in this lesson, we're going to look at an example, which is the River Ribble. In February 2020, the River Ribble flooded, and we're going to look at some of the reasons why. If you look at the map as well, you can see that the River Ribble is kind of a local river to us. You can see not too far away from Blackburn and Bede. So we're going to look at that as a little bit of a case study. So, what causes flooding? We can split what causes flooding into physical reasons and human reasons. So, physical reasons being natural causes and human reasons being factors where we have increased the chance of flooding happening. So, physical reasons, heavy, persistent rainfall, that is the obvious one. Geology, which is to do with the rock types, and relief, which is to do with how steep those slopes are. And the human reasons, agriculture and farming, urbanisation, which means building more houses, and deforestation, chopping down the trees. So we're going to start by looking at the human reasons, and I actually went down to the River Ribble to have a closer look.
So to continue, looking at the farmland, it might look like quite a good defence against flooding, but in fact agriculture and farming is one of the causes of flooding. In the past, all of that land would have been lots of trees soaking up the water, whereas now it is lots of flat fields where the water can gather and go straight into the river. Okay. On the other side of the levee, we've got all these car parks, tarmac, concrete. All of those things are what we call impermeable surfaces. So the water does not soak into them, it just sits on top and eventually it will run into the river. So these two things combined can be two of the human causes to flooding and can cause this river to be more likely to flood. Okay? But when it does flood, it's the farmers' fields that gets flooded because they are much less expensive to flood than the expensive buildings, car park and warehouses that you can see in the distance.
Okay, to add to what I just said then, down at the River Ribble, agriculture. Trees are replaced with crops, so less efficient at soaking up the water. Troughs in the fields can direct water towards the river and speed up the time it takes water to get to the river. And farming is very common on floodplains, and the floodplain is right next to the river. Urbanisation. Urbanisation means more buildings and roads being built. Tarmac and concrete are what we call impermeable, so water doesn't soak into it, and drains get water to the river much quicker. So recently, next to our school, we've had the development of more housing estates, and that is going to possibly be a future flood risk because all of that there, which used to be just fields and trees, is now houses, so impermeable surfaces. And the last human reason, deforestation. So trees slow down the time it takes water to get to a river, and trees soak up water. If we remove those trees from the environment, then they're not soaking up water, and the water is going to get to the river quicker, and it's going to cause more flooding. So they are the human causes of flooding. Now we're going to look at the physical reasons. So heavy persistent rainfall, geology, and relief. So I'm going to quickly go back down to the River Ribble and tell you a little bit about what relief means.
Okay, further along the River Ribble, still more farming, but now we've got the introduction of some slightly steeper hills on just a bit set back from the riverside. And this is one of the other causes of flooding. If we've got this steep, what we call steep relief, and the rain hits these kind of hillsides that have got few trees on, that water is going to head straight down towards the river, which increases the likelihood of that flooding again. So in this area here, there's not really much buildings at all, just a few farmhouses and that's about it really, but we've got agriculture, we've got steep hills, so when that water does hit the land, as soon as this ground gets saturated, that water is going straight into the river and it's going to add to that possible flooding.
Okay, now to talk about the physical causes of flooding. So the first one, and probably the most important is heavy rain. So heavy persistent rain is the main cause of flooding, getting worse and more common due to climate change. So in the future we might see more of these really bad storms during winter. In February of this year we experienced, I think it was the wettest February on record, and that caused flooding not only in the area surrounding us but also kind of countrywide as well. So heavy rain is kind of one of the main causes of flooding. Geology, so this is quite a difficult one. Impermeable, which means hard, those impermeable rocks do not let water through them. So if you've got a type of rock underneath the soil which is impermeable, the water will run along the top of it and go straight to the river. The quicker that water gets to the river, the more likely that there's going to be flooding. And the last one, I talked about it then in the video, relief. Steep slopes means water gets to the river channel much quicker during periods of heavy rain. This increases the flood risk. So all of the things I've talked about, the human causes and the physical causes, it's all about how quick water gets to the river. If water gets to the river quicker, there's going to be more chance of a flood happening. We've now looked at all the reasons and causes of flooding. So on a kind of a final thing now, before I tell you what your task is rainfall to blame for the flooding? So the images that are on the screen now, on the left, this is an image I took a few days ago, so in May 2020, and the image on the right was taken in February 2020, and you can see how high the river level was and how much water spread across those farmers' fields in the background. So during this month, the UK had 209 millimetres of rainfall. This was 237% higher than the average. So there was a significant amount of rainfall. But the question I want to ask you is, could those other factors have made the flooding worse? Could the agriculture, could the urbanisation, the steep slopes, the geology, could it have made the flooding worse than what it should have been? So the question and your task for this week's work is to answer this question. Flooding happens due to human reasons. Do you agree? So all I want you to do for this week's work is answer this question, and it should be about half a side of A4. So I want it to be 3 paragraphs, the first paragraph being physical reasons, the second paragraph being human reasons, and the conclusion at the end, which is your opinion. So I've given you there a little bit of some sentence starters to give you a hand. If you follow that structure, then I'm sure you'll write some amazing answers to that question. Okay, thanks for listening. Watch the video, answer the question, and complete the quiz on Show My Homework. Stay safe, guys.